importance. So, a brief history about multicultural psychology. Also, why multicultural psychology specialists are necessary, and also multicultural psychology as specialty. Okay, thank you. So let's start. Generally, psychology can be defined as a branch of science that studies the functioning of human mind and how it affects human behavior, feelings, and thinking. In other words, multicultural psychology can be defined as a study of human mind relative to human behavior. Psychology is a broad field of study, and in order to make it simpler, general psychology has been subdivided into different specialties. It is worth noting that the human mind is quite complex and this results in diverse behavior among human beings. Multicultural psychology can therefore be defined as a branch of psychology that studies or examines how culture affects the action, feelings, and thinking of people. The study also evaluates the human behavior, putting more emphasis of cultural factors that affect how human beings behave. The branch of psychology analyzes what is perceived to be acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior of people in different societies. It is worth noting that every subgroup among humans beings has a defined behavior that is determined by the cultural norms and values of these people. The study of behavior diversification among human beings constitutes the topic under study in a multicultural psychology. Since culture affects the inner functioning of human beings, such as thinking, multicultural psychology therefore studies that difference among people from different backgrounds and how it is manifested in their behavior. So, a brief history of multicultural psychology. Although multicultural psychology is as a study does not have a deep history, the concept is old as psychology itself. There is no clear and sufficient literature to accurately tell the root case of multicultural psychology. Scholars argue that although multicultural psychology does exist, there are no theories to explain its history and development completely. The study shows that the history of multicultural psychology originated from counseling of psychology fields. Professionals in psychology and counseling found it necessary to study how the cultural diversity affected behavior of their patient, and this led to the study of multicultural psychology at sub specialty of psychology. The history of multicultural psychology is dated to as early as 1879, when psychology has started by Wilhelm Wundt in Leipzig, Germany. Wundt and its friends wanted to measure how the functions of a human mind, such as imagination, reaction, attention, sensation, perception, and emotion, affect human behavior. The intention was to determine why it was difficult to analyze the behavioral differences between people from different societies. During those early days, this was immense discrimination in psychological researches. The psychologists of the time were based in their studies and their own involved the white people and the middle class European Americans males. Additionally, psychological studies involved only males. The rest of the members of the society were considered inferior and consequently not fitting for psychological studies. According to the racial discrimination facing psychological studies in the 19th century, there was a need to study how cultural background affect the thinking and behavior of people. During the early days, multicultural psychology was studied as ethnic psychology and racial psychology. The idea was to determine why people from different racial backgrounds and ethnic groups behave differently. The intention was to come up with a lasting solution to discrimination facing humanity in different parts of the world. The study also aimed at establishing appropriate strategies to affect counseling and behavior balance among people from different social backgrounds, especially when brought together. Psychologists of the 19th century studies the minds of individuals from racial and ethical background in order to determine the behavior. The counseling made by these psychologists was that the minority races were mentally deficient. These findings were not globally accepted. It was necessary to carry more studies, and this gave birth to multicultural psychology. Before the year of 1930, there was no black psychologists. It is from 1930 when black students started to take graduate courses in psychology. During this era, tests white psychologists indicates that black American and Indian children were inferior and were not as smart as those of a white society. The civil unrest that extend in Europe and America in early 20th century made the black scholars to form their own organization of black psychologists. Other minority groups from different parts of the world followed the example of black Americans and formed their own associations. By the end of 1960, several associations of psychologists from minority groups were formed, and in the basis, white psychologists had to accommodate their thoughts too. During the last year and the 20th century, psychologists from minority society, such as those from Africa, South America, Asia, Middle East. The field of psychology was split into different specialists in order to accommodate the views of scholars and different cultural backgrounds. Also, a study was established in the impact of culture and behavior. This branch of psychology is regarded as multicultural psychology. So, why multicultural psychology specialty and also specialists were really necessary? From the above beliefs analysis of the relationships between culture and behavior, it is evident that the human behavior is greatly influenced by their cultural backgrounds. It is therefore clear that the psychologists cannot study the human behavior in a global society without evaluating how cultural diversity among the world population affects human behavior. Therefore, there is a need to study psychological form and the cultural points of view and come up with a clear strategy when establishing a global standard behavior. Thank you.